This is the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France, built in 1889 and standing 300 metres tall. It was constructed from 1,800 individual pieces of metal that were constructed to an accuracy tolerance of 1/10 of an inch, requiring 2.5 million rivets to hold them together. It took construction workers 4 years to build. Wait up there, buddy. That's objective, but it's boring. How about trying it like this? For over 120 years, the Eiffel Tower has been a symbol of the beauty, the grace, the style of the city of lights, the city of poetry, the city of love, the city of romance, the city of love. It represents the dreams, the reveries, the hopefulness of the unique beauty that is love. Hold on there a second, mate. That's all just waffle. Yeah? There's nothing but subjective nonsense. People just need to know facts. They need to know statistics, testable, objective knowledge. That's what they need. I think you're unfairly condemning subjectivity in history. I think that you're overly celebrating subjectivity in the arts. Welcome to TOK Today. Okay, I know that was a bit stupid and it was a bit of spurious fun, but I like to start with the sort of spurious fun because it helps everyone to understand the serious TOK stuff later on, and it just reduces the tension a bit. We will get less spurious, but before we do that, before we get on to the serious stuff, let me explain two things. First of all, if you want to get a free download overview notes for this essay title, keep watching to the end of the video. I'll tell you how you can get them then. And if you want super detailed essay notes that are going to tell you everything that you need to know about this essay, including knowledge argument, real life examples, evaluation, implications, then hit the link in the video description to go to those notes over at toktoday.com. Let's get serious. We are asked to consider whether we overly celebrate subjectivity in the arts and unfairly condemn it in history, and there are many ways to answer this question, and the ideas I'm presenting here are just a very few of the many ways that you could answer this question. So let's first think about that term, subjectivity, the concept of subjectivity. Is this subjectivity of knowledge? Is it subjectivity in the ways in which knowledge is produced? Is it subjectivity in the understanding of knowledge? Is it subjectivity in the interpretation of knowledge? Is it subjectivity of the knowledge producer, or is it subjectivity of the knower? And so on and so on and so on. You can consider one or more of these, or none of these. It's your subjective decision to make. The question of whether we overly celebrate subjectivity in the arts could be considered in terms of whether artistic knowledge is actually subjective. Are there ways in which we could think of artistic knowledge as being objective? And anyway, what does overly celebrate even mean? Is this in terms of the knower's experience of artistic knowledge? Sort of like saying, you shouldn't enjoy that film so much, it's all just subjective? Or is this in terms of the artist's capacity and ability to express themselves through their art? Sort of like saying, I wish that Tolkien hadn't used his imagination so much when writing The Hobbit. He should have been more objective. He should have interviewed more short, hairy people. So in what ways can we overly celebrate something? It implies that we're losing something in the celebration. And what could we be losing in celebration? Maybe the further development of artistic knowledge. Maybe inclusion of other knowledge producers or artists into the discipline. Maybe we're losing the refinement and integrity of the discipline, or maybe we're even losing the ethical principles by overly celebrating subjectivity in the arts. There are just so many ways of writing this answer. Let's turn to history. The question of whether we unfairly condemn subjectivity in history really depends upon whether you think historical knowledge should be objective. Even more importantly, do you think the historical knowledge even can be objective? Personally, I don't think it can, but that's for another video. So where does this subjectivity in history come from? Maybe the methodology, maybe the values and perspectives that the historian brings to the object of their research, maybe in the interpretation of their research. Again, there are so many great ways that you could approach this answer. You are very lucky. However, the question asks whether we unfairly condemn subjectivity in history. As such, we've got to think, well, why would it be unfair to condemn subjectivity in history? And the unfairness must come from the belief that history should be objective and the understanding that it's very difficult to counter subjectivity in history. Now, this is a highly contentious position. Some historians believe that history should be objective, or try to be as objective as possible, but other historians believe that the subjectivity of history is history itself, that the real-life experiences of individual people, their subjective experience of the world, is what history is about. We go into this in a lot more detail in the Talk Today essay notes. So, a couple of final but important points. The first question, who are we in this prescribed title? Who are the we who might be overly celebrating and unfairly condemning? Obviously, in the conventional TOK terms, the we could be the knowledge producer, the artist or the historian, or it could be the knower, those engaging in the arts or history. And maybe this is an evaluation point and an implication point that you could explore. However, there are bigger issues on the freebie of who be the we. In the arts, we could imply the differing perspectives of artists, think like realists versus imaginatists. For example, think of social realist filmmakers versus sci-fi fantasy filmmakers, or in literature, think of historical fiction writers versus romantic novelists, or even better, think of schools of literary theory, for example, structuralists versus deconstructionists, and so on and so on. In history, the we could also imply the different schools or traditions of historians, for example, social and cultural historians versus economic historians, and both will have a very different approach to the role of subjectivity in history. And this brings me to the final and probably the most important point of this essay. I think that this essay is essentially about the purpose of knowledge. That is, what's the point of artistic and historical knowledge? What functions does it perform? What function does it have? Included in that is, how does artistic and historical knowledge function together and apart and with other AOKs? Are there multiple purposes to this type of knowledge? And is the purpose of the knowledge the same as the ways in which it might be used by knowers? And if we consider the purpose and use of artistic and historical knowledge, then we may be able to start to decide whether we overly celebrate subjectivity in artistic knowledge and whether we unfairly condemn it in historical knowledge. So if we consider the purpose and the use of artistic and historical knowledge, then we may be able to start to decide whether we overly celebrate subjectivity in artistic knowledge and we unfairly condemn it in historical knowledge. As I said before, if you want a free download overview notes of this essay, then you'll see the link in the video description for that. You give me your email, I give you some free notes. But if you want more detailed guidance notes to really hit those high TOK essay marks, you'll also see the link in the video description to take you over to toktoday.com. Well, I hope that you found this overview video useful. If you did, then I'd appreciate a like, and I'd be really grateful if you consider subscribing to TOK Today. For more help and lots of resources, then please go to toktoday.com. All that's left for me to do is to thank you so much for watching. Stay talktastic, my friends. Bye.